Lenny Cook was this basketball player from the early 2000s who was an extremely hyped high school basketball player. He was ranked above LeBron James at
Holy
the
shit.
time. In 2001, the NBA, the first round pick was a player named Kwame Brown.
Okay.
He was drafted in his senior year of high school. And then in 2006, they stopped that. So the first hour of Lenny Cook is an hour of footage that was taken at the time, not by the Safdie brothers, but probably by
Oh,
ESPN or something like that,
sure.
of Lenny Cook going to basketball camps, hanging out, watching the NBA draft with his friends, eating McDonald's with his friends. And that's pretty much the first hour. It's very like whatever footage, but it's very interesting because there's early footage of again LeBron James. That's crazy.
That's
Like
crazy.
him, like as a junior in high school, playing against Lenny Cook, and they play against each other at this basketball camp where there are a lot of NBA recruiters and stuff like that watching them play. And Lenny Cook plays against LeBron James. They're like on separate teams at this camp or whatever,
Yeah.
and they're back and forth. They're playing against each other, but ultimately LeBron James he sinks a buzzer beater and he wins the game by like a couple points or something like that.
Sure.
Maybe it was like bad luck because then Lenny Cook, through his own decisions and also being persuaded and pushed by people who were taking advantage of him. He doesn't go to the NBA. He doesn't go to college. I don't even think he finishes high school and nothing happens. It's basically like a spiritual successor to the Hoop Dreams. John Semley, who's like a critic that I like that I follow on Letterboxd, he commented on the fact that this movie's darker and more sadder than Hoop Dreams because the point of Hoop Dreams was to avoid stuff like this from happening. And it just like continues in perpetuity. And then the last half hour of the movie is basically just footage that the Safdies took of Lenny doing his thing now, hanging out in his hometown of Virginia with his friends and his family. He celebrates his 30th birthday. At one point, he goes to New York City to hang out, and that's the half hour. Kind of has this stressful quality to it a little bit. Like anything could happen. Like I'm putting my fucking, finger on the trigger type shit. Maybe not to that extent in this documentary because it's real life, so
Right.
it's not that intense. But it still kind of has that quality to it.
But what happens to Lenny in the end?
What I just described is his life.
What does he do? Like, what's his job?
I think he mentions that he's a cook and he has like multiple children. And again, he didn't have an education or go to the NBA. Actually, what happens is that so like in the first hour, he kind of gets moved around a lot. Some stuff happens where he's given money and I think he wastes a lot of it. He is away from organized basketball for like 18 months. He announces he's in the NBA draft. And I think he gets hired by an agent who is like, yep, you're going to be first round pick. And then the NBA draft comes along and he doesn't get picked at all. And
Wow.
I think that completely sends him spiraling. And so he starts to do a lot of overseas leagues and a bunch of
Yeah.
leagues all over the country, but they don't proliferate into anything and they don't pay well. And so then, yeah, at the end, he's just a guy. His life doesn't appear to be terrible, but other people that are interviewed in the documentary do say he can't let go of the fact that
I mean,
that
that's a hard
that
thing to let go,
that
right?
he was this close. You know what I mean? If certain things were a little bit different, his life probably would have been
I mean, he
completely
would have been a
different.
LeBron James, right? He would have been a
He would have been
successful
yeah,
NBA.
he was above LeBron James, right? That's crazy in retrospect because of just a series of things of decisions that he made, decisions made by terrible people that probably pushed him away from this or that. It just didn't proliferate. And I mean, that sucks when you're that close to it and it evades you.
Yeah, I can't help but think of the film and book Moneyball, and obviously Billy Bean had a very different thing, and they still take people right out of high school, and that's what happened to Billy Bean is he was given a full ride to.
Kwame Brown, they draft him out of high school, senior year, and he was not a good bet. He was a bad player. Like he didn't proliferate into anything all that good. It's just the
Place.
likelihood
Right.
of going into the MLB, the NFL, the NBA is like you have to be a superhuman. And it's luck too.
It's all of these different things combined. And as someone who sort of works in this field, I mean, I literally just had an interview a couple of days ago with a professional hockey player, and he's been a professional hockey player for 4 or 5 years. And he's someone who went right out of high school. He didn't go to college. I mean, he's a successful hockey player, and it's great. And I work with these people all of the time. But it's very frustrating sort of seeing both sides of it, working both with professional athletes and high school kids. And we sell this set of goods to these kids that you don't need to worry about school. You don't need to worry about this. You don't need to worry about that because you're
Right.
going to be a professional athlete and you're going to do this and you're going to do that. And at my school, our athletes aren't at school on Fridays. So I have seniors in high school who have basically missed every single Friday, all 4 years of high school, which is basically like a year of school that they have missed because
Yeah,
they've been
that's
sold
crazy,
this set
man.
of goods that they're going to go on and be a professional athlete and they're not going to have to worry about any of this high school stuff. And it's just It's very
Yeah. Even
frustrating.
yeah, I think they put like a speech that Charles Barkley makes
Mhm.
at an NBA draft in 2001, 2002, where the families of these students, of these high school students who are great basketball players, it's their dream for them to be a successful NBA basketball player. They are being pushed out of high school by their parents or whoever. You see that in hoop dreams, right? My kid is a great basketball player. This is my ticket out of financial ruin.
It's
Yeah,
frustrating that we live in a world where that has to be your ticket out. Because for some of these families, I mean, that is the only way to claw their way out of these situations. That's very frustrating reality, and all this pressure is put on these
way too
15,
much
16 year
pressure.
old kids, put
It's
them on way
crazy.
too young of an age because you have to be. I mean, if you want to be a professional athlete, you got to start doing that at 5, 6, 7 years old. And now you're going to all these practices and doing all this stuff. And
If I had a kid who was a great basketball player, football player, or whatever, yeah, maybe use it to get money to go to college.
absolutely.
I would not tell them, yeah, you're going to go pro, baby. But that would be for their benefit, not mine.
Absolutely. And I think of the sort of flip side of this coin. I can't help but think of King Richard, how on their end they sell him to be this grand, perfect father who's supporting
Right.
his children. And it's like, well, sort of, but also
He's like
being
tyrannical.
he's tyrannical, he's being manipulative.
And the thing about that story that I guess is difficult is that they are
Very
two of the greatest
successful.
tennis players of all
Yeah,
time. And Lenny Cook, he didn't amount to anything in
right.
particular, except when he was in high
But
school,
that's the
unfortunately.
case with
So,
most of these athletes, right?
right.
What's
That's
the
the case for
percentage of
pretty much
athletes?
everybody.
That's why I tell my kids, no matter how good of an athlete you are, even if you're one of the best athletes in the world, maybe, maybe you make it professionally. Even if
Uh-huh.
you make it professionally, you're most likely not going to last in a professional sport for more than a year or two. And then what? What are you going to do with the rest of your life?
In hoop dreams, that one guy, he got hurt early on. And then
Exactly.
it's like,
Yeah.
that's it. It's over.
And obviously, there's a lot of problems with collegiate athletes and the way we prey on collegiate athletes and that sort of thing.
Sure.
However, I tell my kids, you're a good enough athlete. The ones that are good enough athletes, of course, they're not all this good of athletes, but you're a good enough athlete to, even if you're not competitive at the college level, you're at least good enough to be on the team, to get free tuition. I mean, if you have the option to play for free anywhere, even if it's a small school in the middle of nowhere, that's a
Yeah,
full ride
whatever.
to college. That's an
Yeah.
opportunity
You go
to
ahead.
become something else, to become something better. And maybe you never play tennis or run or do whatever a day in your life after college. But for the next 4 years, you're going to be supported in a way, especially in a small town and socioeconomic low community like mine, where for the first time in your life, you have the opportunity to live like everyone else, to survive in this world and to make something of yourself. And it's frustrating to see kids that just don't see it. And it's not their fault because they're children. They don't know any better. They've been
Right.
sold this lie by
And
professional
and they say
athletes,
that,
by the
yeah.
media. Yeah.
Yeah. And Lenny Cook, he was such a high prospect that people gave him money so that he could be more comfortable because he was that good. But then he squandered all of his money. But he was 17 or like 16 or
Yeah, he's a
whatever.
kid.
Of course, he spent it all on shit. It's like giving kids way too much responsibility.